going to talk about the contrast in between doing versus being, because ultimately us human beings love to be doing, right? There's this perception that doing is successful. We are expected to often do. And this idea of being isn't often talked about or even noticed. So I'm going to talk about the contrast of what it looks like when we're doing versus being. I'm going to talk about why we tend to like to do instead of be, and also the importance of listening to the body and how the more we can tune into what's happening on our insides, the more we can really get curious and inquire and support ourselves to shift from doing towards being. So let's first off talk about the quality of doing. Doing has more of this fast-paced, urgent energy to it. It has this frequency that is very much go mode. Being, on the other hand, is more of a sense of presence, of connection to yourself, connection to your environment, connection to those you are around. Being is simply presence. Doing is a whole lot of survival energy on. So why we want to notice this is because doing is ultimately exhausting for our system. The more we do, the more our stress hormones are overworked, and the more likely we are going to go from doing all the time to crashing. So, what's an example of doing versus being? When we're doing, there's that urgent feel like I should be doing something. I need to be doing something. So there's this sense of, whoa, I need to always be moving. I need to be moving my leg, moving my finger, fidgeting with something, looking at my phone. I need to always be doing something versus being present with what I'm doing, whether that's nothing or something intense. So for example, let's use a sport, because sport is definitely doing. When we're getting ready to do the sport, so let's use surfing as an example. So I might wake up and have this urgency to need to go surf. There's this sense of like, I need to go surf today, I'm gonna surf for 2 hours, I'm gonna make sure I catch this many waves. There's this urgency to needing to do it. And almost this expectation like I have to. And truth is, I've lived in a lot of towns that were very heavily focused on sport. And that was one thing that used to drive me crazy, is people's expectations of having to do these things. Like, what, you didn't ski today? What, you didn't surf today? Right? This attitude of always having to be doing. Now, that being said, once we're doing the sport, we can do from a place of being. And we can also do from a place of doing. So let's talk doing from a place of being first. So let's say I'm out in the water and I'm out for a surf. If I'm present and noticing the water, noticing the people out there with me, noticing the environment, noticing the air on my face, and really present with what's happening now, I'm in a very different state. I'm in more of a being state while doing something. That's very different than if I'm out there and I'm being aggressive and I'm not really aware of what's happening around me and I'm just focused on catching more waves, catching more waves, catching more waves. There's this quality to it that has, again, this urgency versus this presence and this being quality. Now, being ultimately to me has more of this calmness. Even though we can be active in the calmness, there's just this space. Versus being has this urgent, fast feel. So the first thing I'd like to invite you to get curious about is, throughout your day, do you have this quality of this expectation of needing to do? Do you have this feeling inside of you that's constantly like, go do, go do, go do? Let's do something. I can't just be. And when you're doing things, is that same quality present? Something to get curious about. I'll talk about that in a sec, about how to use your body as an indicator on what's going on. But first, let's talk about why doing is often our go-to. And the reason is it's familiar. We tend to be in more of that doing state because it's comfortable. We tend to do that because there's all kinds of things overcoupled with it. Like, if I do, I'm going to be successful. If I don't do, I'm going to be a failure. If I don't do, fill in the blanks. You can put a lot of things in there, right? So there's this sense of always needing to do because. The other thing to consider is when we have dysregulation in the nervous system, it's this onness that we know, and settling and being in more of a restful state or more of a being state is unfamiliar and can even be scary to the nervous system. So anytime you slow down, it might be uncomfortable, and there might be this sense of like, well, what is this? And nope, I need to do again. And that's why the work that I do, I find, is so valuable, because it's starting to teach the nervous system that it doesn't always have to be on go stress mode, that it can actually settle. And this is so important. This is nervous system regulation. The more we can become more regulated, the more we can drop into this restful state to recover, to rest, to let the internal organs do what they need to do, to really take care of ourselves. And the more regulation we have on board, the more we're able to respond to whatever's happening in our day-to-day life. Instead of always responding from this place of doing, we start to respond from more of a place of being relative to what's happening in our environment. So, how do we start to support ourselves in these curiosities? We turn into the body. Our body has so much to teach us. And the more we can learn to listen to the language of our physiology, the more we can learn to support ourselves to shift out of that go mode and into more of a regulated state, more of that place of being. So what I'd encourage you to do is start to notice on a day-to-day basis, tune in whenever the heck you'd like, notice when you're in more of that doing state. What do you feel in your body? Can you feel this urgency? Do you like to fidget? Do you like to always be doing something? Are you always scrolling on your phone? Is just part of your body always wanting to move? Is there an internal sensation that has this frequency or this vibrancy to it? Are there sensations present that indicate this urgency to be doing? And if so, is it possible to turn that down just a tiny bit? Now, just a little bit is huge, because often when we drop straight into just being, the system's like, what the hell is this? I don't know this. Blah, get me out of it. It's uncomfortable. But the more you can start to get curious about turning down this frequency just a little, you might notice, oh, interesting, my belly just softened, my shoulders just softened, my voice just softened, and my breath is more available. Huh, wow, I just shifted from doing to doing a little less. Right? Moving towards being. Also notice if there are moments in your life where you might find yourself in more of that being state, where you find yourself connected with the ground, you can feel your feet, you can notice the birds chirping around you, you feel connection to yourself, and there's a sense of ease. However it is, you experience more of this quality of being. And get curious, when you land in that, what does it feel like to you? How do you know you're more in that versus more in this doing quality? Now, how is it you can start to experiment with landing here a little more often? Or at least doing a little less, a little more often. So you're starting to invite the system itself to move out of the stress response and into more of the being response bit by bit. So get curious. I'd love to know in the comments below what you experience in more of that doing quality versus being quality, and where you spend more of your time. And keep me updated, because this is an ongoing inquiry, and to me the work I do is all about learning to shift out of that doing and into that being. And to me, it's a lifelong journey, because let's look at the world around us. We are encouraged to do. The more we can recognize that we can do from a place of being, the more successfully we will be living life from a more authentic place. So go get curious, let me know how it goes, and don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions.